You say no to everything. You're just pretending to be allergic, aren't you? That's not it, I really couldn't breathe. I won't accept my child being picky. Come on, open your mouth. I was forced to have shrimp stew by my stepmom, who was unaware of my allergies. Back then, I was really scared. I thought I could die if things kept going like this. The one who saved me was my strong, kind grandpa. My name is Stacy. Thanks to the pandemic, my husband has been able to work remotely more, so we've had more family time, which makes me happy. The pandemic itself was troublesome, but ultimately, it felt like a good experience. Having family time is important. As a child, I barely had any. My mom passed away after multiple hospital stays. My dad raised me alone but was often too busy with work to be at home. However, he earned well, so I think we lived a comfortable life. Still, I always wished for more time with him, even if it meant being poor. My dad must have noticed my loneliness. He often asked, "Don't you want a mom?" Raising a girl as a single father isn't easy. There are things he felt he couldn't say because he was a man. It seemed he was concerned about that. But as a child, I couldn't imagine what that meant and always answered, "I don't need a mom." I thought my late mom was the only mom I had. But to my dad, it seemed like I was just being stubborn. "I'm sorry for making you feel lonely, I'll do my best." He always apologized to me. I always thought his doing my best meant his work. But I learned that was a misunderstanding when I was in the 4th grade. This is Allison Ford. She might become your mom someday. One day, my father brought home a woman, introducing her to me with slight embarrassment. She was a woman with her straight black hair tied back, looking very neat and tidy. "Nice to meet you, Stacy. I'd be happy if we could get along." Allison, who would later become my stepmom, extended her hand to me, but as a shy child, I froze on the spot. "Are you shy, Stacy?" my dad mediated, and Allison chided. "No, a girl needs to be proactive and charming." My dad chuckled. "Well, she's still only 10. It's important to start young in the world of women, charm is everything." Is that so? Unfamiliar with the world of women, my dad was persuaded by Allison, "Come on, Stacy. Shake hands." Following his prompt, I shook her hand, not fully understanding the concept of remarriage, thinking, does shaking hands mean she becomes my mom? My late mom was the only mom I ever had. Following that, I met Allison several times because my dad kept inviting her over. There was no escape. Honestly, I didn't really want to meet her. If we got along, a new mom would appear, and I didn't want that. Then, one day, when Allison was at our house, my father had to leave due to a call from work. "Sorry, a coworker of mine messed up." "Sorry. Allison. Can you look after Stacy?" "Leave it to me." "Let's get along well, Stacy." Allison agreed with a smile, but I wished she would go somewhere else too. I had met her several times, but her presence was somehow oppressive, and I found it difficult. However, I couldn't say, "Dad, don't go." He was working to support me, after all. So, it was just Allison and me. At first, she energetically suggested games like card games. But then, "Hey Stacy, can you show me your report card?" As I hesitated, Allison pressed on. "As someone who might become your mom, I'd like to know about your academic performance." "It's okay, you don't need to know." "Oh, are you embarrassed?" "It's okay, show me." Despite her smiling face, Allison's words left no room for objection, and I showed her my midterm report card. No way, D in math. It's not good for a child who's going to be mine. You have a lot of C, you should study more. Let's go to the library today. But, I can't go out unless Dad says it's okay. It's okay, I'm with you, I'm going to be your mom. You won't get in trouble. I wanted to say, you're not my mom, but as a child just beginning to understand the nuances of human emotions, I couldn't say it outright. It would have been better if I could innocently throw a tantrum and say, you're not my mom. And so, before I knew it, I was heading to the library with Allison, who acted completely like my mom. At the library, she insisted I study content that was meant for a grade higher than mine. I didn't understand it at all, but she convinced me with a logical reasoning that I couldn't handle my current studies because I wasn't preparing in advance. Moreover, when I called her Allison as usual outside, she got very angry. "Call me Mom. Otherwise, people will look at us strangely." I didn't understand what she meant, but looking back, Allison probably didn't want to be seen as my stepmom or my non-biological mother. From then on, Allison's perfectionism began to show, worrying about others' opinions and the details. Even in terms of language, using trendy phrases would get me severely reprimanded. Using something like slay would result in, using the same language as those brainless kids will lower your dignity. Although there is some truth in using proper English, calling my friends brainless kids was distasteful even to me. Adults use slang like slay too, so it's the same. I put up with Allison even though I had issues with her, to avoid upsetting my dad, and in the end, Allison became my official mom. "From today, Allison is your mom," he reported after the fact, and we started living together. I was then expected to call Allison Mom. Actually, my dad said I could call her whatever I wanted. But Allison said, it would be strange if Stacy called me by my name when we get married, and so my dad agreed, thinking, "You're right." Thus, Allison secured her position as my mom in our house. Even after they married, my dad was still busy with work, and I spent a lot of time with Allison. It was a stress-filled time. Being alone with her, who still didn't feel like my mom, was just awkward. So, whenever I thought about going out with friends, Allison would stop me with all her might. "No playing with anyone until your report card is all A's," she insisted, with the strictness of someone facing exams. Still, wanting to create time away from home, I would make plans to play, only to be scolded by Allison and cancel, a terrible cycle. And so, my friends viewed me as either challenging to be friends with or someone to feel sorry for not having a mom. Maybe it was self-inflicted, but I wanted an escape. And I naively hoped that if I repeated the same actions, Allison might give in. In reality, it only tightened her control. Gradually, I grew to dislike talking to Allison or calling her mom, and when my dad was not around, I spoke less and less with her. Allison always scolded me, "Be more charming," but I no longer cared. One day, while my dad was on a business trip, a serious incident occurred at home. "Mom, I can't eat this." That day, she had prepared dinner with shrimp stew and omelette, foods that seemed appealing to children but were dangerous for me due to my allergies to shellfish, eggs, and dairy. Allison was well aware of these allergies, and until that day, she had never included allergenic ingredients in our meals. Yet, she did. The menu seemed maliciously planned. "What's this? Are you being picky again?" "No. I'm allergic." "You always say that, Stacy. You hate studying, you hate communicating, you hate everything. Are you just using this as another excuse? That's no way to grow up into a respectable adult." "That's not it. I really had a severe allergic reaction once. I broke out in hives all over and couldn't even breathe." "Don't lie. I won't allow my child to be a picky eater. Eat it and you'll be cured. Open your mouth." With that, Allison pinched my nose. Unable to breathe, I involuntarily opened my mouth, and she shoved the spoonful of shrimp stew into it. My throat involuntarily swallowed. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. A nurse said, "Oh, good, you're awake," as she approached me. Shortly after, my paternal grandpa came to my bedside with tears in his eyes. "Stacy, I'm so glad you're safe." "Why are you here, Grandpa?" "It seems your stepmom, Allison, informed Ethan about your collapse," he explained. Ethan is my dad. From what my grandpa told me, Allison had ridden in the ambulance with me but was so flustered when she called my father that her explanation was incoherent. Thinking that I wouldn't be at ease with Allison, my dad had asked her to go back home and sent my grandpa here instead. "You haven't had a reaction this bad since we first found out about your allergy. What happened?" Holding my hand, he offered me warmth and comfort, bringing tears to my eyes. My grandparents, including my grandma who was in heaven, always encouraged me by saying, "Allergies are just part of who you are. Don't worry about it." Encouraged by my grandpa's unchanged, gentle smile, I decided to tell him everything that had happened with Allison. After listening to what I had to say, my grandpa clenched his fists and sat in silence, visibly shaking with anger. "That's why I was against this remarriage," he muttered. I later learned that my dad had only informed my grandpa about the remarriage after the fact. My grandpa had been very concerned about the challenges of remarriage with a child. Will Allison and Stacy really get along? He had been planning to visit soon before this incident occurred, leaving him feeling incredibly anxious. "Stacy, you'll stay here in the hospital overnight, and tomorrow, after you're discharged, I'll go to your house," he decided. Huh? I can't leave my granddaughter with that woman. With that, my grandpa told me to rest well and left the room. I didn't fully understand his last words, but my exhausted body didn't have the energy to ponder further, and I fell into a deep sleep that night. The next day, my dad, Allison, and my grandpa came to pick me up. My dad said, "Dad, you didn't have to come." But my grandpa sternly declared, "I have something to discuss, so we're going straight to your house." Allison was visibly frozen by the tense atmosphere. Once we arrived home, my grandpa instructed my dad and Allison to sit down on the floor. "Why?" my dad asked, but Allison obediently followed the instruction and knelt down. My dad, puzzled, did the same after watching her. "Ethan, do you know what that criminal woman has done to Stacy?" "Criminal? What are you talking about?" "Let me put it another way. Do you know why Stacy was hospitalized?" My dad looked confused for a moment. "Huh? Didn't she eat the stew because it looked delicious, even though she knew she shouldn't?" "She wanted to try Allison's cooking." My dad looked at Allison, my grandpa, and me, questioning. "Is that not it?" Allison, with her hands trembling on her lap, clenched her trousers. My grandpa heaved a deep sigh. "Is that the story she came up with?" "Listen, Ethan, listen well. That woman forced Stacy to eat the shrimp stew." "Huh? What do you mean? Why would she?" My dad looked at Allison, but she avoided his gaze. She either thought Stacy's allergies were just a preference, or she didn't believe her at all. "And she forced her to eat that stew." Allison protested. "I didn't force her." "Oh? Pinching her nose and forcing her mouth open isn't forcing?" "Well, I thought if it's just a preference, maybe she doesn't like the smell." "Even if that were the case, forcing someone to eat something against their will is still coercion." Silenced by my grandpa's words, Allison turned to face my dad. "It's not like that." "What do you mean, not like that?" My dad's voice was low and clearly furious, a side of him I hadn't seen since my mom's passing. "It's a shame she can't eat certain foods. She'll struggle as an adult, right? Back in my hometown, they thought allergies could be beaten by getting used to them. And Allison, there are foods you can't eat too, right? You hate parsley, don't you?" But that's just a garnish, it doesn't cause trouble or embarrassment if I don't eat it." My grandpa snorted at their exchange. "Ha! So you also have foods you can't eat. You're just trying to make excuses for yourself. At least wait until you have no dislikes of your own before saying such things. It's because of people like her who think allergies can be cured that we still see people being rushed to hospitals for allergic reactions. One wrong step, and Stacy might not have lived to become an adult because of you." Seeing my grandpa so angry was new to me, and I felt as though I was being scolded too, shrinking on the spot. Noticing this, my grandpa gently stroked my head and reassured. "You've done nothing wrong." My dad also apologized for scaring me, and I shook my head in response. "In addition, Ethan, that woman has been complaining about Stacy's grades and interfering with her friendships among other things. If at least you were more present, I could leave Stacy in your care, but I can't stay silent if you say you'll take care of her while keeping a wife like her by your side. If it comes to that, I'd rather take Stacy into my own home. I understand you're busy, and it's all for Stacy's sake. But reconsider what's truly most important for her right now." I thought my dad would ponder Grandpa's words, but he immediately responded, "No," causing Allison's face to tense. "I wanted a mom for Stacy, which is why I remarried you. I married you, Allison, because I love you, but if the marriage isn't benefiting Stacy, that's out of the question." I thought Stacy might feel lonely without a mom. Stacy, tell me your true feelings. Do you want a mom? I shook my head again. The only mom I want is the one in heaven. I don't need another mom. Tears streamed down my face as I remembered my late mom. The pain of never being able to see her again was unbearable. I see, I've been so caught up in my own decisions without considering your feelings, Stacy. I'm sorry for making you suffer. Thank you, Stacy. With that, my dad hugged me tightly. Allison, I want a divorce. What? Allison looked shocked, as if she had anticipated it but couldn't believe it was actually happening. This isn't just your fault, Allison. I also failed to notice the changes in Stacy. But no matter how much I take that into account, I can't keep someone in our home who endangers my daughter's life. Wait. We've only been married for 2 months. I won't do it again. We can get along, right, Stacy? Allison reached out to grab my hand, but my dad stopped her. Don't touch Stacy. I loved you. How can you talk about divorce now? There are other ways, like leaving Stacy with her grandpa. So that's how you think. Then I definitely can't continue this marriage. I've said it before and I'll say it again, my late wife's memory and Stacy are my top priorities. I work hard in a job I don't even like for Stacy's sake. You still love your wife who's long gone more than me. I didn't divorce because we fought or I disliked her. She was suddenly taken from this world when I still cared deeply for her. Even now, she's my second priority, and our precious Stacy is the first. I discussed this with you before we married. But I'm the one who loves you the most now. If that were true, I would have wanted you to care for Stacy, who is so important to me. Since you couldn't, we can't continue being together anymore. I don't understand, what are you saying? Frustrated, Allison grabbed a photo frame from the shelf that contained a picture of my mom holding me as a baby. This thing. She screamed, and she was about to smash the frame on the floor when my grandpa swiftly twisted her arm up. Stop it right now, or I'll take this matter to civil court for assault. No. Frightened by my grandpa's intense gaze, Allison begged. Please, I beg you not to. I later heard from my grandpa that suing might not yield more than the hospital bills in compensation. It would be a net loss to pursue a lawsuit, but for him, it wasn't about the money, it was about ensuring my safety. You're apologizing to the wrong person. You should be apologizing to Stacy. You've been justifying yourself this whole time and haven't once properly apologized to her. Eek. I'm sorry, Stacy. Allison apologized to me under my grandpa's pressure, but honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted her out of the house. Hearing about the lawsuit and not understanding much about law, I wondered if I could receive compensation but quickly dismissed the thought. I didn't want a single dirty penny from someone who could have taken my life. I won't forgive you. Please leave now. It was the first time I had ever stood up to an adult, and my lips trembled, but it was all I could muster. Allison turned pale, my father looked sternly at her, and my grandfather praised me, rubbing my head vigorously. Seemingly resigned, Allison looked down and said, I'll bring the divorce papers later. There's no need for that, my dad interjected immediately. I don't want you anywhere near Stacy again. I'll come get the divorce papers myself, and don't you ever show up in front of us again. Okay. Thus, my dad's brief and intense second marriage came to an end. Allison returned to her parents' home, but one day, after getting drunk, she let slip the reason for the divorce, and when her parents found out the truth, that she had endangered her stepdaughter, they disowned her. They had thought my dad was cheating on her, but the truth was far worse. Her parents once came to apologize, but my grandpa rejected their apology, saying, We don't need apologies, just stay out of our lives. They left some compensation money, but my grandpa sent it back, stating, Money can't solve this issue. If Stacy had been taken from this world, no amount of money could make up for it. Accepting the money would mean forgiving you, and that will never happen. Carry the guilt forever. My strong grandpa, with his unwavering spirit and deep affection for me, is my pride. After the divorce, at my grandpa's suggestion, my dad, grandpa, and I started living together. My dad's job wasn't one that could be scaled back, and his company didn't have much understanding for such situations. Nonetheless, it seemed neither my dad nor grandpa could bear the thought of me feeling lonely anymore. Occasionally, my grandpa and my dad would engage in fruitless discussions about who spent more time with me, claiming, "I've been with Stacy longer, so I'm her dad." Or, "I'm her dad, so that doesn't matter." I feel like they're both fine as my dad, but I'll just keep that to myself. I secretly enjoy seeing them argue out of concern for me. I could never admit that out loud. When I decided to get married, they even argued over who would walk me down the aisle. I didn't hesitate. I had both my dad and grandpa stand by my side, and we walked down the aisle together. At that moment, I thought I saw my mom's figure waiting at the end, and I hoped she was happy for me. Now, with a child of my own, I've fulfilled my grandpa's dream of holding his great-grandchild. Sometimes, I'm a bit jealous of my daughter, wishing I could go back to playing with my grandpa as a child. My husband and dad spoil her so much, always buying toys. Our entire family is head over heels for her. I hope we can all continue to watch her grow together. So, Dad, Grandpa, stay healthy and live a good, long life.